There was once a young girl named Aisha. She was only 16, but life had already shown her more pain than most people see in a lifetime. She lived in a small, broken house at the edge of the city. The roof leaked when it rained, the walls had cracks, and the cold winds of winter always found a way inside. Aisha's family had been poor for as long as she could remember. Her father had passed away when she was just a child, and her mother was often sick and too weak to work. Aisha was the one who carried the weight of the family on her small shoulders. Every morning she would wake up before the sun, wash her face with cold water, and step outside with an empty stomach. She had no fine clothes, no shoes without holes, and no books to study from. But what she did have was a heart full of hope. Even when she was hungry, she smiled at her mother and told her everything would be fine. She was young, but her heart was stronger than most adults. Aisha spent her days searching for work. Sometimes she washed dishes in small tea shops, sometimes she cleaned the floors of rich houses, and sometimes she sold flowers on the roadside. Whatever little money she earned, she always carried it home to buy bread and medicine for her mother. But the money was never enough. There were nights when Aisha would sit by the window, listening to her mother coughing, while her own stomach growled from hunger. She would close her eyes and whisper to herself, one day life will change. The neighbors often ignored her. Some even laughed at her old clothes and torn slippers. Children her age were going to school, carrying bags full of books, while Aisha carried buckets of water on her shoulders. Deep inside, she wished she could also sit in a classroom, hold a pencil, and learn to write her dreams. But reality was different. Yet, even in her struggles, Aisha had something special inside her, kindness. She never complained, never became bitter, and never turned her heart into stone. Whenever she saw someone in need, she always tried to help, even if she had almost nothing herself. There was one winter evening that showed just how strong her kindness was. The sky was dark, the air was freezing, and Aisha had just finished a long day of work. Her hands were red from the cold, and her stomach had not seen food since morning. In her hand, she carried a small piece of bread, the only food she could afford that day. She was tired, weak, and her legs trembled as she walked home. But then, on the side of the road, she noticed someone sitting quietly. It was a beggar, covered in an old blanket, his face hidden in the shadows. He looked older, weaker, and hungrier than she was. People were passing by without even looking at him. Some threw him dirty looks, others acted as if he was invisible. Aisha stopped. Her eyes softened. She looked at the bread in her hand and then at the beggar. She thought of her mother waiting at home, hungry and sick. She thought of her own empty stomach. Yet, her heart spoke louder than her hunger. She slowly walked towards the beggar. Her voice was gentle, almost like a whisper, when she said, "Uncle, you must be hungry. Please take this." And with those words, she stretched out her hand and gave him the only food she had for the night. The beggar lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes were tired but sharp, almost as if he was studying her soul. For a long moment, he said nothing, only staring at the girl who had just given away her last piece of bread. Aisha gave him a small smile, even though her own stomach ached. "It's okay," she said softly, "I will be fine." Then she turned, ready to walk away into the dark, cold night. But something about the way the beggar kept looking at her made her heart beat faster. His eyes did not look like the eyes of a poor man. They looked different, almost as if he carried a secret behind them. Aisha did not know that her small act of kindness that night would soon change her life forever. Aisha kept walking slowly after giving the beggar her bread. Her body felt weak, but her heart felt light. She always believed that even the smallest kindness could make a difference. She had done what she thought was right. But as she moved further, she suddenly heard a soft voice behind her. "Wait, child." Aisha stopped and turned back. The beggar was looking at her, holding the bread in his hands. His face was still hidden under his hood, but his voice carried something powerful, something unusual. She hesitated. Normally beggars just accepted food and said thank you, but this man was different. His voice sounded firm, almost educated. Slowly, Aisha walked back to him. "Yes, uncle," she asked softly. The beggar studied her face for a long moment before speaking again. "Why did you give me your bread when I can clearly see you are just as hungry as I am?" His words surprised Aisha. She had expected him to simply eat, not to question her. She looked down at the ground and replied in her shy voice, "Because hunger I can bear, but to see someone else suffer, that is harder for me." The beggar's lips curled into a faint smile. He had heard many excuses in his life, but never such an answer. For a moment, he said nothing, just kept staring at her with sharp, thoughtful eyes. Aisha felt a little nervous. Who was this man? Why was he speaking like this? The beggar then asked again, "Do you always help strangers this way? Even when you have so little?" Aisha nodded slowly. "If I can share even a little, then I am never truly poor," she said. Her words were simple, but they carried wisdom far beyond her years. For the first time, the beggar chuckled softly. He broke a small piece of the bread and held it out towards her. "Take this back. You need it more than me." But Aisha shook her head. "No, uncle. Please eat it. My mother is waiting for me at home. She will be happy to know I helped someone." The beggar leaned back against the wall, staring at her with curious eyes. He finally took a bite of the bread, but he ate it very slowly, as if each bite carried deep thought. Minutes passed in silence. The street grew colder, darker. People hurried past, not caring about the girl standing with a beggar in the corner. Then the beggar spoke again. His voice was calm but heavy with meaning. "You have nothing, and yet you give everything. Do you know how rare that is in this world?" Aisha looked confused. She didn't understand why he was speaking in such a strange way. "Uncle," she said softly, "I don't have much, but I still have a heart. And a heart is only alive when it feels for others." Those words struck the beggar deeply. He lowered his gaze, almost as if hiding his emotions. For a long time, he said nothing, just sat silently, holding the bread as if it was a treasure. Aisha finally smiled at him, bowed her head with respect, and turned to leave. She had to reach home before her mother worried. But as she walked away, the beggar's voice echoed again. "Child, remember, not every beggar you meet is truly poor. Some beggars carry secrets you cannot imagine." Aisha froze in her steps. She turned her head slightly, but the beggar had already lowered his face again. His words kept ringing in her ears, filling her with curiosity and confusion. She whispered to herself, "What did he mean? Why does he speak like that?" Her heart beat faster. She felt something unusual, something hidden behind his tired eyes. But she didn't dare to ask. She was too shy, and besides, her mother was waiting. So Aisha walked home in silence, but her mind was restless. For the first time in her life, she felt that a stranger had left a mark on her heart. That night, as she sat beside her mother and tried to sleep, she could not forget the beggar's words. His tone, his eyes, his strange way of speaking, everything about him felt mysterious. She didn't know it yet, but her simple act of kindness had already set something in motion. Something bigger than she could imagine. And very soon, the beggar would reveal a truth that would shake her entire world. The next morning, Aisha woke up early as usual. She tied her scarf around her head, washed her face with cold water, and stepped outside to find work. But her mind was not calm. All night she had been thinking about the beggar's strange words. Not every beggar you meet is truly poor. Some beggars carry secrets you cannot imagine. Those words played again and again in her head. Why did he say that? What kind of secret could a beggar hide? She tried to push the thought away, but her heart pulled her back. By evening, after finishing her small chores, she decided to walk past the same street again. Something inside her told her the beggar would still be there. And she was right. He was sitting in the same place, his back against the wall, wrapped in the same old blanket. But this time, when Aisha looked closer, she noticed details she had missed before. His hands. They were not rough like the hands of poor men who worked on streets. His fingers were long, his nails were clean, and even though his clothes were torn, his posture was straight, almost proud. Aisha's heart beat faster. Who is he really? She walked slowly towards him. "Uncle," she said softly, "are you still hungry today?" The beggar lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes sparkled in the dim light, sharp and steady. A small smile appeared on his lips. "Hungry? Yes. But not for food." Aisha blinked in surprise. Then, "What are you hungry for?" The beggar leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Hungry for honesty. Hungry for kindness. Hungry for people like you." His words confused her. She stood silently, not knowing what to reply. Finally, she said, "But I am just a poor girl. I don't have anything to give you." The beggar's smile grew wider. "You gave me more than anyone else ever did. You gave me your last piece of bread. Do you know how many rich people passed me that night? Do you know how many looked at me with disgust? Yet you, who had nothing, gave everything." Aisha felt her cheeks turn red. She looked down, embarrassed. "It was nothing. I only did what was right." The beggar studied her for a long moment. His eyes were not the eyes of a weak man. They were sharp, almost like he was measuring her heart. Finally, he asked her something unusual. "What do you dream of, child?" Aisha froze. No one had ever asked her that before. Her whole life was about survival, finding food, finding work, keeping her mother alive. Dreams were a luxury she could not afford. But after a long silence, she whispered, "I dream of a better life for my mother. I dream that one day I can study. I dream of becoming someone who can help others, not just struggle every day." The beggar closed his eyes, nodding slowly as if her words touched something deep inside him. When he opened them again, there was a strange brightness in his gaze. "You have a pure heart," he said quietly. "And pure hearts are rare. Very rare." Aisha felt uneasy. His words sounded less like those of a beggar and more like those of a wise man, or even someone powerful. Who was he? Why was he hiding behind dirty clothes? She wanted to ask him, but fear held her back. Instead, she softly said, "Uncle, you speak so strangely. Who are you really?" The beggar chuckled. "If I tell you now, the story will end too soon. Some truths must wait for the right moment." Aisha's curiosity grew even stronger. But before she could say anything else, the beggar handed her a folded piece of paper. "Keep this," he said. "Don't open it until the time feels right." Her hands trembled as she took it. The paper was old, but neatly folded, like something important. She wanted to open it immediately, but the beggar shook his head. "Not yet. Patience will show you the way." The mystery grew heavier around her. Aisha nodded slowly and tucked the paper into her pocket. As she turned to leave, the beggar spoke once more. His voice was calm but filled with meaning. "Remember this, child, the poorest people are not the ones without money. The poorest are those without kindness. You are richer than many you cannot imagine." Aisha walked home with a storm in her mind. She wanted to know what was inside the paper. She wanted to know who this man really was. She wanted answers. But more than anything, she wanted to understand why her one small act of kindness had led her to this strange, mysterious path. That night, she could not sleep. Her hand kept touching the pocket where the folded paper rested. She knew that whatever was written inside had the power to change everything. And she was right. Because very soon, the beggar's secret would be revealed. And Aisha's life would never be the same again. The small piece of paper never left Aisha's pocket. 4 days, she carried it with her everywhere, while fetching water, while working, even while sleeping. She wanted to open it so badly, but the beggar's words echoed in her head, "Not yet. Patience will show you the way." Each day she returned to the same street, and each day, the beggar was there, waiting silently. Sometimes he spoke little, sometimes he only watched her with those sharp, knowing eyes. The more she met him, the more her curiosity grew. Who was this man really? One evening, when the sky was painted with the last red light of sunset, Aisha could no longer hold back her questions. She approached him quickly, her eyes wide with courage. "Uncle," she said firmly, "I cannot wait any longer. I need to know. Who are you? Why did you give me this paper?" The beggar looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he stood up. For the first time, Aisha saw his full height. He was tall, his shoulders broad, and though his clothes were torn, his presence was powerful, commanding. He spoke softly but with weight in every word. "Very well, child. You have waited long enough. Tonight, you will know the truth. Aisha's heart pounded. The beggar took a deep breath and pulled back the hood of his blanket. In the fading light, his face was clear, his beard trimmed, his eyes sharp, his skin not weak and pale like she had expected, but strong. He did not look like a man broken by poverty. Aisha gasped. You are not a beggar. He smiled faintly. No, I am not. She stared at him in shock. Then why are you sitting here on the street? Why are you pretending? The man's eyes softened. Because I was searching. Searching for something the world has almost forgotten. Searching for kindness. Aisha's lips parted in disbelief. Kindness? Yes, he continued. I have walked these streets dressed as a beggar for many days. Hundreds of people passed me. Rich men, well-dressed women, even children with money in their hands. But they all ignored me. Some insulted me, some kicked me away. Only you, only a poor girl with nothing, gave me everything you had. Do you know what that means? Tears filled Aisha's eyes. She shook her head slowly. The man placed his hand gently on her shoulder. It means you have the richest heart of all. And that is what I was searching for. Aisha felt her knees weaken. The world around her seemed to blur. But, why? Why were you searching for kindness? The man took a step back and straightened his back proudly. His voice grew firm. Because I am not just a man on the street. I am a businessman. A millionaire. The words struck Aisha like thunder. She gasped so loudly that people passing by turned to look. A millionaire. The beggar who had eaten her bread? Her mind spun. You are rich, she whispered. Yes, he said calmly. Wealthy beyond what you can imagine. But wealth means nothing if it is surrounded only by greed. I wanted to see if there was still a heart in this world that values kindness more than gold. And I found that heart in you. Aisha's hands trembled. She remembered the folded paper in her pocket. With shaking fingers, she pulled it out and held it up. Then, what is this? The man smiled knowingly. Open it. Her breath caught. She slowly unfolded the paper. Her eyes widened as she read the words written in neat handwriting. This is a promise. Whoever shows me true kindness will have their life changed forever. Beneath the words was a name. A name she had heard before, whispered in the city like a legend. A name belonging to one of the wealthiest men in the land. Her lips trembled as she read it aloud. Mr. Karim. The man nodded. Yes. That is me. And from this day forward, your life will never be the same. Aisha's heart raced. She could hardly believe what was happening. The man she had thought was a hungry beggar was actually a millionaire in disguise. And now, he was looking at her not with pity, but with deep respect. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But, why me? I am just a poor girl. I don't deserve this. Mr. Karim's eyes softened with kindness. You deserve it more than anyone. Because in your poverty, you gave away what little you had. That is the greatest wealth of all. And now, it is time for you to receive what you truly deserve. Aisha stood frozen, unable to speak. Her world had just turned upside down. Everything she thought she knew about life, about poverty, about kindness, it all changed in a single moment. And as she stood there trembling, she realized that the beggar's secret was not just about who he was. The real secret was about herself. Her kindness had power. Her kindness had been seen. Her kindness was about to change her life forever. For a long moment, Aisha stood frozen, staring at the man who had revealed himself as Mr. Karim, the millionaire in disguise. Her hands shook, her lips trembled, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She could not believe that a simple act of kindness had brought her to this moment. Mr. Karim looked at her gently and said, Aisha, your life will not be the same anymore. You gave without asking. You helped without expecting. Now it is my turn to give you what you truly deserve. Aisha lowered her eyes, her voice soft and unsure. But, uncle, I am just a poor girl. I don't know anything. I don't belong in your world. Mr. Karim smiled. Kindness does not belong to one world. It is the bridge between every world. You think you are poor, but your heart is richer than the hearts of many kings. And I will make sure the world sees that." He pulled a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. It was shiny, with his full name printed in bold letters. Underneath was the address of his office in the city. "Come here tomorrow," he said. "I have a place for you." Aisha stared at the card, her fingers trembling. "A place?" she asked. "Yes," he replied firmly. "A place where you will not have to struggle every day. A place where you can study, where your mother can rest, where your dreams can finally grow. You are no longer alone in this fight." Her heart pounded. Could this really be happening? She looked up at him, her eyes wide with both hope and fear. "But what if I fail? What if I am not good enough?" Mr. Karim placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. "The only people who fail are the ones who never try. And you, Aisha, have already proven you are stronger than most. You gave when you had nothing. That is the greatest strength of all." The next morning, Aisha walked into the city with the card clutched tightly in her hand. She wore her old clothes, her torn slippers, but inside her heart there was a new light. She felt nervous as she entered the tall glass building with Mr. Karim's name shining at the top. People in fine suits looked at her with surprise, some even with judgment. But she walked on bravely, remembering his words, "You are richer than many you cannot imagine." When she stepped into his office, Mr. Karim greeted her with warmth. He introduced her to his staff and told them her story. "This girl," he said proudly, "showed me a truth that money could never buy. From today, she is not just a guest, she is family." Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, respected, valued. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Karim kept his promise. He arranged for Aisha's mother to receive proper medical care. He placed Aisha in a good school, where she was given books, uniforms, and a chance to learn. Every day, Aisha studied with all her heart, knowing this was the opportunity she had always dreamed of. And yet, even with all the changes, she never lost her humility. She still greeted the poor with kindness, still shared whatever she could, and still carried the memory of that night when she had given away her last piece of bread. One evening, as she sat beside her recovering mother, Aisha whispered, "Mama, our life has changed. But do you know how it started? With a simple act of kindness." Her mother held her hand tightly and smiled with tears in her eyes. "Yes, my daughter. And that is the secret of life, what you give always comes back, sometimes in ways you cannot imagine." Years passed, and Aisha grew into a strong, educated woman. She worked side by side with Mr. Karim, helping him manage his business. But more importantly, she helped him open shelters for the poor, schools for children without money, and hospitals for the sick. She made sure no child would ever feel the hunger she once felt, no mother would cry the tears her mother once cried. And whenever people asked her, "How did your journey begin?" she would smile and say, "With a piece of bread and a heart that refused to stay silent."